I went on watch at 8 o'clock at night, 2000. As I was standing there about 2010, I heard splashings of an oars. I called to the person in the rowing boat, "Do you hear there? What is your duty?" When he approached and said there was something in the net, we then immediately told him that we would meet him at near the west gate. We tried for some time, both on wireless and Aldous to Watson's depot and the wireless to Garden Island, but we could never get any answer back. Owing to the fact that it was only 10 feet of water, we could not approach closely to the net. As we looked, we could more or less see there was something there in a shape. But the shape looked so big, it seemed that it could have been something like a mine. But owing to the fact that all you could see were this black thing sticking up in the air, in no way did we think it was a submarine, because all we could see was the forward part sticking in the air. So we said to Mr. Cargill, would he like to take the stoker so that he could recognise it and come back, and then we knew exactly what it was. So they very leisurely rowed towards the article, and then you could hear the O's when they seen the object, and the rowing boat immediately turned round and come back like a speedboat as fast as they could, and all they're saying, it's a submarine, it's a submarine. We didn't expect this in any manner at all. We realised that it was caught, but we didn't think anybody would kill themselves, because I mean to say that's death. We was laying off in the deeper water when the commodores of the Sydney's barge came up alongside, indicated that the Commodore was coming aboard. He went into the wheelhouse with our commanding officer. The commanding officer was telling the Commodore about what has happened in the net and the submarine blowing itself up. The Commodore was just about ready to leave when all of a sudden there was another explosion up the harbour. And he said to me, "What was that?" I said, "It sounded like an underwater explosion to me, sir." He looked at me and just said, "Thank you," got into his boat and then set sail for his residence. We did get a ping on a submarine, and seeing it was nearer to the outer part of the harbour, we did move up and down the seaside so we could send the submarine further up the harbour, because we were acting in another area at the time, and we chased it up towards Taylor Bay. The next thing was the other two Hollywood fleet did sight the midget submarine. As we raced in to drop the last depth charge, I was certainly saying plenty of words about the Japanese coming to my harbour.
Started as an ordinary seaman, second class they used to call it. When you're under 18, you're ordinary seaman second class. It was the night of the attack. I was on board the Bungaree. It was the largest mine layer in the world at the time, but also the slowest. Most mine layers, especially in the RN, the Royal Navy, they travelled about 40 knots. Bungaree was flat out at 12. The Bungaree was tied just close to Garden Island. We was about 50 yards away from the Chicago. I'd gone up onto the deck and sat on the forecastle on one of the bollards, watching the Manly ferries and activity on the Chicago American cruiser that was close by, and feeling sorry for myself for being a Sydney native and coming from Manly, watching the Manly ferries go up the harbour, and I wasn't on one of them. I was just about to decide to go to bed, and the alarm bells rang. I was right at my action station because I was sitting on the forecastle. My action station was on the 12-pounder gun. And all the fellows are racing up on the deck, and they're all complaining, "What silly so-and-so rang the alarm bells? We're in Sydney Harbour, you know." Chicago had come to life, and they got searchlights going all over the harbour, and they illuminated a Japanese sub between them and Port Denison. We trained onto the midget sub with our gun, and through the telescopic sight, I could see the little Japanese in the conning tower looking around. He was as though he was disorientated, looking to see what was going on. All this only took about 10 seconds, and just as we lined him up, he disappeared.
I was given sentry duty on Kuttabul steps where the vessel was actually moored. I'd started my shift from 8 o'clock until 12 o'clock at night, but when 12 o'clock came, my relief didn't turn up, and I waited for him for a while because I was on a 4-hour, 4 hours on and 4 hours off shifts, watches, and about 12:15, I ran from where I was onto the Kuttabul. I knew where he slept, and I went and woke him up, and I ran back and I waited for him to come down. He came down about 12:25, and fortunately said something that was to eventually save my life. And he said, "Sleep in my hammock." So I went on to the Kuttabul and went up onto the upper deck and got into his hammock. But I'd taken my shoes off, my boots off, and I settled back in it, and I actually dozed off in the short time there. Apart from the noise of the explosion, I couldn't hear anything else. Not that I was deafened by anything, but I just wasn't conscious of anything else. I think the first thought was just sheer panic, as to get off as quickly as I could, because it was a matter of survival. The vessel was sinking pretty rapidly. I found my way eventually in the darkness to the steps. Lowered myself into the water, took a sort of a deep breath, and as I went down I got washed back up virtually, and I was caught in the stairwell, and I swum underwater. And as the years have gone, people have commented to me I must have swum through all the wreckage and where the bodies were, because that was where all the damage was, and eventually found the exit, and I found my way to the seawall, and I climbed up there, and a rating came running up to me in the dark, and first words he said, "Where are all the officers?" And I said, I don't know, I don't think anybody's alive, I think everybody's dead. I wasn't conscious of any movement or noise or anything. It was just sort of me standing there until this rating ran up, and then of course soon after that others came out, and they took me off into the hospital, and I was admitted suffering from shock and immersion. The shock part was pretty true, because it was certainly a frightening experience. Strangely enough, before it all happened, I can't remember any noise on the harbour. I was surprised there was, with all the activity on the harbour, that somebody didn't say, "Well, look, they're coming in." I knew nothing. And innocently, I just went on to the Kuttabul and walked almost to my death.
I was stationed on the Kuttabul for 1 week. That was all. I was watchkeeping on a gun crew. Not that I knew anything or had anything to do with the gun, but it was to give them a break for a tea break or something. They had to have somebody there to do it, so they used us, any ratings that were living on the Kuttabul, and that was supposed to get you food and lodgings. I was supposed to be woken at 11:45 to be on watch at midnight. But the guy didn't turn up, did he? I was thinking about getting up and getting onto my watch, because I knew the bloke at the gun would be looking at his watch and wondering whether on earth his shift was. And I was scrambling out of my hammock just after midnight, and just got my feet on the deck, and bang, she went. You could feel it listing, you see, going down. I thought, well, something's hit it. And I thought, now, there's only one way out, and that was down the gangway, because I was up on the upper deck, you see. And the gangway ashore was on the deck below. So I tried to walk, I couldn't walk, so I got down on my behind and got down the gangway that way into the water. And when I got down to the bottom, that's how I got hit on the head with a beam or some such thing. Next thing I knew, I was in Prince of Wales Hospital in Randwick. I opened my eyes and on the wall was a clock, and it had 3 o'clock on it. It was at that stage that the surgeon commander was leaning over me and saying, "They got to come off. They got to come off." He said, "But I can't do it now. My anaesthetist has gone home and I can't bring him back, but I'll take him off in the morning, just make him comfortable." Strangely enough, I never had a mark on my ankles, but it was a concussion, smashed everything that was available in my bones in my feet and my ankles. They were just the outside skin was holding them on. Everything was broken in underneath it. And then in the morning, of course, the surgeon commander turned around the sick bay tiffy and congratulated him. He said, "That's good thinking," because he put them on back splints, you see, and wound them up with bandages. And then when they took the bandages off in theatre, my feet stayed there. And the surgeon commander said, "Cool, I think we can save these." And the only consolation I thought about is that the guy that was supposed to have wakened me, he'd have been there instead of me, so it's... There were 2 Englishmen. I befriended one of them very much, and they were both on the Kuttabul waiting for transport back to England. One of them, the guy that I felt so sorry for, was waiting to get back to England to see his wife and his baby he had never seen, but he was killed on it. It was Frank Kirby.
I was a motorboat driver and I used to drive them motorboats at night, and sent us out into the harbour with this dirty big depth charge on the back. If ever we'd have dropped it, we'd have got up with it. You know, when you look back in hindsight, all that was over. The submarine had fired 2 shots under the Chicago, bounced off the wall at Fort Denison, and blew back and
blew up the Kuttabul. I was there when they raised the sunken submarine. I was over at Garden Island. Saw it come in, saw them bring the people out of the Kuttabul, some of them.
Sydney Harbour, naval depot and vital shipping centre, chosen as the scene of Japan's daring assault on the night of May the 31st. Guarding the harbour from attack by surface craft stand heavy batteries, well-nigh impregnable fortresses, wartime weapons of death for the intruder. The attack came. Possibly towed to the rendezvous by a large submarine, the underwater convoy approached within sight of the Sydney Heads. Vigilant eyes of the Navy, harbour patrol boats joined in the alarm, and in this reconstructed scene we get an impression of what happened that night as Sydney's defences went into action, seeking and smashing the lurking invader. The subs fired 2 torpedoes. One missed, but one hit a seawall, the explosion raking an old ferry boat nearby. The other end floated for half an hour, but this part disintegrated. Many naval ratings aboard had weird experiences. Some were thrown out of windows and doors by the blast. Some were trapped in the sinking hull and only hauled out at the last minute. Daylight found the survivors in dry clothes and smiling. Bandsman J. Cummings saved 3 men, repeatedly diving into the water after them. Some were less fortunate and lie in hospital, recovering from minor injuries. It's a miracle how they survived such a blast. 8 men who lost their lives received naval honours at burial. These men did their duty. Australia will remember. Eight mothers paid the price of war, but soon victory will shine through tears. Below a salvage float in Sydney Harbour lies a Japanese sub, and others strew the ocean bed. Japan has her answer. Sydney's harbour defences are prepared.
Jap submarines invade Sydney Harbour. Their only victim, an old ferry boat converted to Navy use. 2 torpedoes found their mark before the invaders were blasted to the bottom. Divers locate the invader craft near the harbour entrance. One by one, all are raised to be salvaged for scrap. Some never had a chance to fire a shot, so quickly were they destroyed. Australian Navy men say these underwater raiders are bigger than the type sunk by the Americans at Pearl Harbor. At any rate, these are 4 deadly fish that didn't get away.
They brought the subs on barges, and the crane from Crocodile Dock picked the sub up and dropped it on Clark Island. I took a photo with an old box camera. I was amazed at how small they were. It was the first time I could realise that 2 men could fit in them.